case is the people of the state of Michigan versus Chayse Hardy. We have file 2023211, where he's here today represented by Ms. Yancey. We have 2023229, where he is represented by Mr. Sopanos. We have 2123763, where he's represented by Mr. Bush. And 2123764, where he's represented by Mr. Bush. Mr. Gabriel is the prosecutor. This case was set for a status conference today. Each attorney had previous status conferences with Mr. Hardy, and it was agreed that we would set the matter for today for there to be a proposed global resolution of all of his cases. Mr. Gabriel made his offers, well, some time ago. Counsel have been meeting with Mr. Hardy regarding those offers. It's my understanding that some requests made by the defense were agreed to today by the prosecution. So nothing has changed in terms of the offer from the prosecutor other than to indicate they will make it better, but no worse than it had been. And that Mr. Hardy has spoken to his attorneys about this and wishes to resolve all of his cases with pleas today. Now, is that correct, Ms. Yancey?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Bush?
That is correct, Your Honor.
Mr. Sopanos?
Yes, Your Honor.
And Mr. Gabriel, is it accurate that you made your first offers to all counsel a while back and then just today made it better by agreeing to some of their requests?
Yes, Your Honor. Those were put in writing and sent to the council after one of our last status conferences with the court, in which the court decided to move it to today. So I put it in writing. It went out. There was a brief conversation with Mr. Sopanos asking me why I wanted a certain thing in one file. I conceded the point and said I'll be satisfied by just the 2 counts instead of 3. And that's, you know, that's where we stand. They've been talking to the client, and I was advised we were going to resolve it today.
All right, so Mr. Hardy, please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Mr. Gabriel, again, just for the record now, could you explain what the offers are in each of these cases?
I can, Your Honor. Your Honor, first I draw the court's attention to file number 2023211FH, in which Mr. Hardy is represented by Christine Yancey. That is a count alleging both assault with a dangerous weapon, failure to stop at a scene of personal injury accident, supplemental information, and that prelim additional counts were added. However, I've indicated that he can enter a plea of guilty to the 1 count of assault with a dangerous weapon, and all other charges will be dismissed as to that file. The next file that I draw to the court's attention is file 2023229FH. That is a multiple count CSC case involving multiple counts of 3rd-degree criminal sexual conduct and various forms of penetration, a count of being a felon in possession of a firearm, and then a 4th-degree count along with the supplement. After discussion with Mr. Sopanos, I have agreed that he can enter 1 count of CSC 3 and indicate to the court that there were multiple involvements, and 1 count of being a felon in possession of a firearm, and that all other counts would be dismissed as well as the supplemental information. Then drawing the court's attention to file 2123763, which is represented by Mr. Bush. That was an additional multi-count warrant that charged 2 counts of unlawful imprisonment with victims, and I believe there may have been 2 counts of felonious assault. Basically, Mr. Hardy has an opportunity to admit 1 count of lawful imprisonment, these 2 individuals. All other charges, the other count, and all other charges and supplements would be dismissed. I also indicated that there is another file Mr. Bush represents him on, that is 21-23764 FH. That's kind of the fleeing and eluding case that occurred. That case will be dismissed in total. I have looked at other cases that we have open, and the only other one I found was a misdemeanor, 20-959. He is represented by Mr. George. I spoke briefly to Mr. George and told him that if Mr. Hardy decides part of his sentence will include the $411.88 for some tires, I'm going to dismiss that case. And that will close everything that we have open or pending with Mr. Hardy. And that's as global as I can get it, Your Honor.
When you say we, you mean the county?
I mean the county prosecutor's office, correct.
Because he does have city ordinance violations that are not affected by this, is that correct?
That's what I'm advised today by Mr. Bush.
Okay. And then also you previously agreed at a previous status conference that you would not charge absconding also.
I will not charge absconding, and I am making a sentence recommendation that all of these sentences would run concurrent, that we would put a Killebrew recommendation to the court that the sentence not exceed the minimum point of the advisory guidelines as scored by the court. And
wait a minute, you just said minimum. Did you say minimum or medium?
The midpoint of the minimum. Okay, so the midpoint of the guidelines as scored by the court.
Okay.
And if the court decides to go under the midpoint, I'm not withdrawing, I'm not asking to withdraw. So basically a ceiling. If the court exceeds the minimum the midpoint of the advisory guidelines, then they would have an opportunity to withdraw.
Okay. All right, so starting in order of those cases. Ms. Yancey, is that your understanding of the agreement?
It is, Your Honor, but I would add, Mr. Gabriel indicated that we had a prelim and that there were charges added. We did not have a prelim, it was waived. We were set that day, waived it that day. So this information complaint does show what was charged on the original complaint felony. I just want to make sure the record's clear on that.
That is correct, Your Honor. I apologize.
Okay. Mr. Sopanos, is that your understanding of the offer? Mr. Sopanos?
Sorry, I had you on mute. Yes, it is, Your Honor.
Okay, and Mr. Bush?
That is the offer, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Hardy, you heard the offers. Let me go through it again with you. 2023211. The offer is that you plead to a charge of assault with a dangerous weapon. That's a felony, and it's punishable by up to a maximum of 4 years in the Department of Corrections and or a fine of up to $2,000. DNA was to have been taken upon arrest, and a consecutive sentence may be imposed if the assault was committed in a place of confinement. The charge of failing to stop the scene of a personal injury accident and the habitual offender third would be dismissed. In file 2023229, the offer is that you plead to one count of criminal sexual conduct in the third degree, which is a felony, and it's punishable by up to a maximum of 15 years in the Department of Corrections. There will be mandatory AIDS, STD testing, and DNA was to have been taken at the time of the arrest. It is also subject to the Sex Offender Registry. It will place you into the Sex Offender Registration Act. And then there is also a count of felon in possession of a firearm. And that is a felony punishable by up to 5 years and or a fine of up to $5,000 and mandatory forfeiture of the weapon or device. They would dismiss the other counts of criminal sexual conduct. They would dismiss the habitual offender third offense notice. And in file 2123763, the offer is that you plead to one count of unlawful imprisonment. That is a felony punishable by up to 15 years in the Department of Corrections and or a fine of up to $20,000. The other count of unlawful imprisonment and the 2 counts of assault with a dangerous weapon would be dismissed. And for some reason, they did not charge a habitual in that case, but that would be not sought either. Then they would dismiss file 21-23764, which contains 1 count of fleeing and eluding and 2 counts of assaulting, resisting, obstructing police officers. And in addition, they would dismiss file 20959 if you were to agree to pay restitution of $411.88 for the damage to the tires. The offer also includes a recommendation from the prosecutor that although each of these cases could be consecutive to each other, he would recommend that they run concurrent with each other, and also that your minimum sentence not exceed the halfway point of the guideline in each of the cases. So in each of the cases, your minimum sentence will not exceed 1/2 of the guideline range, whatever that's determined at the time of sentencing. If I were to go above that, say I couldn't do it and go above that, you would be allowed to withdraw your plea. And in addition, they will not charge absconding. So is that your understanding of the agreements?
Yes, Your Honor.
Are you currently on probation or parole?
No, sir.
All right, so let's go through each of these individually then. In file 2023221, and I've already sworn you in, right?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, good. On the charge of assault with a dangerous weapon, a felony punishable by up to 4 years and/or a fine of up to $2,000, DNA was to have been taken at the time of arrest. The consecutive sentence could be imposed if the assault was committed in place of confinement. And the other factor is that a consecutive sentence could be imposed for any file where you're on bond for another, but all the consecutive is irrelevant because the prosecutor is recommending that they all run concurrent, which means rather than one case finishing and then starting the next sentence, they would all run at the same time, okay? So in regards to that case, how do you plead?
Your Honor, I hate to interrupt, but we didn't go over his advice of rights. Was he going to sign that there at the jail?
I'm going to read it to him,
Okay, I'm sorry. I just wanted to make sure.
okay? So, Mr. Hardy, how do you plead?
Guilty.
Okay. Now, in this case, has anyone promised you anything else other than what we've talked about in order to get you to plead?
No, Your Honor.
Anybody threaten you?
No, Your Honor.
Or are you doing this of your own free will?
Yes, Your Honor.
Now, this is going to apply to all these cases, okay? So you understand that you're not going to have a trial of any kind if I accept your plea.
Yes, Your Honor.
And you understand you're going to be giving up all the rights you'd have had at trial. Those include the right to be tried by a jury, to be presumed innocent until proven guilty, to have the prosecutor prove beyond a reasonable doubt that you are guilty, to have the witnesses against you appear at trial, to question the witnesses that appear against you, to have the court order witnesses you have for the defense to appear at trial, to remain silent during the trial and to not have that silence used against you, and to testify at trial if you want to testify. You understand you're giving up all those rights in all these cases by pleading guilty.
Yes, Your Honor.
You also understand that if your pleas are accepted, you may be giving up the right to appeal certain issues that would otherwise be appealable if you were convicted at trial. Further, any appeal for your conviction and sentence pursuant to the pleas will be by application for leave and not by right. You understand that?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. So this case alleges that on January the 6th of 2020, you were in the city of Three Rivers, the county of St. Joseph in the state of Michigan. Is that true?
Yes, Your Honor.
And that at that time you made an assault upon a Jason Kolzinski by using your car, without intending to commit the crime of murder or intending to inflict great bodily harm less than the crime of murder. What happened that makes you guilty of that?
I hit him with the car, Your Honor.
All right, you ran into him with your car. And was he walking or was he in another car?
He was walking on the sidewalk.
Okay, and you did that intentionally?
Yes, Your Honor.
Are counsel satisfied a factual basis has been established? Ms. Yancey?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Gabriel?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. Now in 2023229, here there are 4, 7. There are 7 counts of CSE in the 3rd degree, 1 count of felon in possession of a firearm, and 1 count of CSE in the 4th degree. So I'm only going to ask you about 1 of these CSE in the 3rd degrees. The offer is that you plead to 1 count of criminal sexual conduct in the 3rd degree involving a person between the ages of 13 and 50. This is a felony punishable by up to 15 years in prison, mandatory AIDS STD testing, DNA to have been taken upon arrest. It's also subject to the Sex Offender Registration Act. It's a Tier 3 offense, and therefore will place you on the Sex Offender Registry. So how do you plead to that charge?
Guilty.
And then count number 8 is felon in possession of a firearm. It's a felony punishable by up to 5 years and or a fine of up to $5,000 and mandatory forfeiture of the weapon or device. How do you plead to that charge?
Guilty.
Again, other than what we've talked about, anybody promise you anything to get you to plead?
No, Your Honor.
Anybody threaten you?
No, Your Honor.
You're doing this of your own free will.
Yes, sir.
And again, as I described, all your trial rights you're waiving by pleading guilty. You understand that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Here it's alleged that on or about January 20th or the evening of January 20th into January 21st, you committed the offense of criminal sexual conduct in the 3rd degree, in that you did engage in sexual penetration, penis, vagina, with a victim who is between the ages of 13 but under 16. Did you have sexual penetration with a person between the ages of 13 and under 16 in Fabius Township on that date?
Yes, Your Honor.
And you're how old yourself?
I'm 20.
Okay. And then in count and when I say you had sexual penetration, you inserted your penis into her vagina, is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Count 8, felon in possession of a firearm. Here it alleges at that same time you did possess a firearm when you were ineligible to do so because you had been convicted of delivery or manufacture of marijuana, a felony that was punishable by imprisonment of 4 years or more, and the requirements for regaining eligibility had not been met. So do you admit that you were previously convicted of the felony charge of delivery or manufacture of marijuana?
Yes, sir.
And do you admit that you had not met the requirements for eligibility to possess a weapon? Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
And did you possess a weapon at that time on January 20th to 21st in Fabius Township?
Yes, Your Honor.
Was it what kind of weapon was it?
A handgun.
Okay. Mr. Sopanos, are you satisfied that a factual basis has been established by your client's statement of facts?
I am, Your Honor.
Mr. Gabriel?
Your Honor, Mr. Spanos and I talked by allowing the plea to 1 count of CSC, it is understood that there likely will be some issue at sentencing that there were other sexual acts. And I wanted it understood whether we need to have a statement from Mr. Hardy or not, that we're aware of those, we anticipate that scoring, and I would ask the court to inquire Mr. Hardy if there were additional sexual acts between himself and this young lady.
Well, I had indicated that the information included 8 other counts of CSC involving penetration. And yes, it's going to come into the scoring for other criminal acts that will not be resulting in a conviction. And so, Mr. Sopanos, Mr. Hardy, I don't want to ask your client directly something that's not related directly to the plea. This is more of a sentencing issue. But the whole goal of this is to avoid a hearing. So what's your client's position on the scoring of the other penetrations?
Well, Your Honor, I haven't talked to him about the scoring, but I did tell both him and his parents that come time for the pre-sentence investigation, those will be scored to and be included in his guideline calculations. And everything that Mr. Gabriel just said is true, that he's going to argue, and so will the pre-sentence investigator, that there was more than just penile-vaginal. We're aware of that, Your Honor. And by like you pointed out, the mere fact that there was 8 counts of CSC with all different penetrations, it's obvious.
All right, so Mr. Hardy, you understand that although you're only pleading to 1 count, all of the occurrences that occurred within that 24-hour period will be considered at the time of sentencing under a different offense variable. And so we'll get the pre-sentence report back, and then you can look at it for its accuracy and let Mr. Sopanos and your attorneys know if anything's inaccurate or if you disagree with it. But clearly that'll come up. But yeah, everything's in there in the information. Okay.
And what Mr. Gabriel said is accurate, Your Honor. We know and we anticipate that.
Okay, good. All right. So with that, has the court established a factual basis?
Yes, Your Honor.
Are you the counsel aware of any other promises, threats, or inducements in that file?
No.
No, Your Honor.
All right.
Your Honor, Your Honor, do you want me to stay on for the rest of the sentence, even though the rest of the plea, even though you've already done my client?
Yeah, I'd like you to just, so there's no confusion. It's just going to be another case and then we'll be done.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next file is 2123763. In this case, Mr. Bush is the attorney. And here, Mr. Hardy, the offer is that you plead to this count. It's a 15-year felony and or up to a $20,000 fine. All the other counts would be dismissed. How do you plead to the charge of unlawful imprisonment?
Guilty.
And again, has anyone promised anything else to get you to plead in this case?
No, Your Honor.
Anybody threaten you?
No, sir.
You're doing this of your own free will.
Yes, sir.
And again, you understand that you're giving up all the trial rights that you had that I described to you earlier in the hearing.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, here it alleges that on February 3rd, 2021, you're in the city of Three Rivers, the county of St. Joseph of the state of Michigan. Is that true?
Yes, Your Honor.
And here it's alleged that you did knowingly restrain a 14-year-old by means of a weapon or dangerous instrument while in the city of Three Rivers, county of St. Joseph, state of Michigan on February 3rd. What happened that makes you guilty of that?
We got in an argument and we started fighting, and they didn't want to fight.
Okay. Reading the affidavit, it indicates that they were both at your apartment. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
And that the three of you had been consuming marijuana and liquor?
Yes, Your Honor.
And that at some point you had a bottle of Hennessy and you told them they couldn't leave, and you took their cell phones from them and said, don't leave. And you threatened them with the bottle as you did that. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
And thereby you restrained them in your apartment until you passed out and they left.
Yes, Your Honor.
Counsel satisfied a factual basis has been established in that case.
Defense
I am, Your
counsel
Honor.
is satisfied.
All right. And are you aware of any other promises, threats, or inducements?
No, Your Honor.
I'm aware of none, Judge.
Has the court complied with the court rule?
In all cases, Your Honor, the court has.
The court has complied in my file.
Ms. Yancey, did I ask you that? I don't remember.
Yes, you did, Your Honor, but you have complied.
Mr. Sopanos, did I comply with the court rule?
You have, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Hardy, do you agree that you will pay $411.88 for restitution in the one misdemeanor case that's going to be dismissed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, good. All right, that resolves that issue. All right. I find all the pleas are made knowingly, understandingly, and voluntarily, and that there's a factual basis for each of the separate counts. Therefore, I accept the pleas, and we'll set these. Now, how many do we have on the 28th?
That's not that many.
4 beforehand, but are used to response.
We won't.
You need
use
more
it
than that.
after- We won't use it after today.
Okay, so May 28th is the sentencing date for all of these cases. There'll be one pre-sentence report with each case
Connie there.
included in it. 5/28 at 1 o'clock. In the meantime, bonds canceled, and we'll see you back here on May 28th, Mr. Hardy. And the pre-sentence report will be prepared, and we will, you'll get that the week of the sentencing. You'll have a chance to review it with your attorneys, and then we'll be ready to go on the 28th. All right. Now, if there's any issues with it, you know, email, I'll send emails. If I see issues with the report, you send emails, counsel, so that, you know, if there's a need for a hearing or something like that, we can address that before the 28th. All right,
Thank you,
thank you,
Rob.
everyone. All these cases are now resolved. The other case will be dismissed, and that concludes